Hi, I'm Tim. Please join me in this video as I show you how to get started in the hobby of RC model aircraft. Let's get to it. In this video, I'll go over the steps that you could take to get started in this wonderful hobby of flying radio-controlled RC model aircraft. I'm not going to teach you how to fly. There's plenty of videos to do that, but I'll walk you through things you need to do on finding clubs, flying instructors, tasks needed to get started with the FAA, and just get a solid foundation that you can enjoy this wonderful hobby. Please note that there are chapters down below in the timeline if you'd like to jump ahead. And how did I think to do this video? I was at my local RC club a couple weeks ago, and we had our club meeting, and the club president was talking with a newcomer, an older gentleman that was aware that RC model aircraft had flown. He was out of the field, and it was really on behalf of his grandson. He goes, how do we start? What's the first step in becoming an RC pilot and enjoying this club? So I thought about it. I thought about things that have changed since I first started flying radio control models in 1972, things that are occurring today with the FAA, drones, remote ID, clubs, the whole nine yards. And what I'd like to do is walk you through some steps that you could take to position you for success in this wonderful hobby of flying RC model aircraft and just doing some of the fundamentals. Keep in mind, a lot of this is my personal opinion. There are certainly other ways to do this. But please join me in this video as I discuss some good ways to properly get engaged and enter the radio control model airplane hobby. As I collected my thoughts for doing this video, this is being filmed in 2024, I thought back to when I first started flying radio control model aircraft in 1972. As we all know, if you were around during that time, it was completely different than it was today. The only way really to get information on model airplane flying was either some of the multi-magazines such as RC Modeler magazine or going to a club and just talking to the members how to do that. There was no internet, there were no chat groups, no forums, no YouTubes. You just had to get a lot of the information on your own. It's just frankly difficult to do that at times. Plus, another thing to keep in mind back then, RC model airplane equipment was expensive. A quality craft 4-channel radio purchased in the early 1970s in today's dollars corrected for inflation be pretty close to $3,000 for a 4-channel radio. This was not a computer radio, it was on a single frequency. So I will say that today the RC model equipment is the most affordable it's ever been. It's just the least amount of money needed to get a quality RC set or almost ready to fly airplane is today. So local hobby shops were very important as a starting point for finding fields, getting some amount of expertise, getting supplies. There was no Amazon or really mail order until the early 1980s. And the other thing that is important now is there are quality, almost and ready to fly RC model aircraft. These are very well-built aircraft with all your equipment installed. Typically, you have to add a receiver so that you can work with your transmitter and the batteries if it's electric-powered flight. But the ARFs are a great way to start. I always encourage building your own aircraft, but for learning how to fly, consider getting a ready or almost ready to fly RC model, and I'll make some recommendations on that later on in this video. An important point, and this is my opinion, but I think it's important to start off this discussion. I am a firm believer over my years of flying both full-scale and model aircraft that if you get the fundamentals right of learning how to fly, it sets the foundation for success in whatever you may do later on. Again, just learning the foundations with an instructor, with a trainer aircraft. And what this means is no automation for the trainer aircraft. Automation for RC model airplanes certainly has a place. It can help with some of the micro models, smoothing out the twitchiness of those models. Certainly for higher performance aircraft such as jet turbine aircraft, gyros and so forth can help a lot. But I think you're going to be best served if you get a good trainer without automation, just so you learn the basics of flying, basic of piloting aircraft, airmanship, pitch plus power equals performance, all the stuff you have to learn. The idea being you'll be a good pilot, you'll be comfortable in the fundamentals, and that'll give you a great basis and foundation to graduate for more high performance aircraft. Keep in mind, everybody begins with a trainer, and as they get those skills down, to include RC model aircraft, you can very easily go to such readily available, almost ready to fly models such as electric ducted fan aircraft. Just a quick note on drones. This video is geared towards fixed wing RC model aircraft. These airplanes fly, you have to learn how to fly them. If you take your hands off the stick, the aircraft will crash because they're airplanes. If nobody's put it in the control input, they are going to crash. I have some experience with drones. The drones are very interesting. I like them a lot. They're fantastic for what they're designed to do. Flying to a location in the sky, taking video or pictures. But the key thing about drones is they're incredibly well built, designed, and automated. They are utterly dependent on autopilots to fly. There is no such thing as a free flight drone. And the drones fly themselves. It just took me a little bit of time to get used when I was flying drones for the first time. You literally take your hands off the sticks, the control sticks of the controller, and the drone just maintains its space, maintains its position and altitude. And then you basically position the drone with the sticks where you want to go. So that amount of elevation, automation is absolutely appropriate to drones. It matches perfectly with the drones because the architecture requires a computer to fly that. But again, for the fixed wing model aircraft, I think for the initial trainers, you're best served by not having any automation on the aircraft so that you know that any input you do as the pilot is what you are doing, and you can learn from that to properly fly these model airplanes. Again, the purpose of this video is to get you prepared so that you are in a good place with the right aircraft and some of the preparatory tasks done to, with your instructor at your club airfield, be prepared to have a good start with your flight lessons, continue your development of an RC model airplane pilot. In line with that, another little bit of good news is that there are no special physical requirements needed to fly RC model aircraft. The one thing that I would recommend before you fly, if it's been a while since you've been to the eye doctor, to the optician, having good vision, 20/20 vision, is very helpful for flying the RC models. We have to see them. We have to know the orientation when they're far away. It might not be all that easy to do. It's been a couple of years since you've had an eye exam. It's worthwhile getting that. You would like to get 20/20 vision with glasses. If you have to wear glasses, that would be greatly helpful if it's been a while since you've had your eyes checked. If you have other challenges, physically, mobility issues, whatever, that is not a problem flying the RC model aircraft. There's a range of people that have great success in that area. So that's a good news story. Age is really not an issue, whether you're a little bit of an older participant or one of the younger participants. If you want to do it and you are at the field, you should be able to learn how to fly an RC model aircraft. So in short, there's no special hand-eye skills needed to fly the models. As a very general rule, if you can drive a car, you can fly an RC model airplane. It is pretty much what it boils down to. The other thing is you really don't need any knowledge, technical knowledge of RC electronics to fly these airplanes. Everything is built well at the factory these days. You simply plug in components and you're off and flying. There's just no special requirement for that at all. In addition, as I alluded to earlier, you don't have to build your own aircraft. The almost ready and ready to fly RC model aircraft, usually built from foam, the vast majority of them, are exceptionally high quality, they're well built, and they fly very well. And you'd be well served to get one of those for your initial trainer aircraft. Another good first step before your first lesson entering the RC model airplane industry is to join the AMA or the Academy of Model Aeronautics. I have a link down below. There's a link in the description. The AMA is a nationwide club of flyers. And the AMA is just a good organization for a bunch of reasons. I'm not employed by the AMA. I don't have any contact with them. I am an AMA member, and I'll list through some of the reasons this can be helpful. First of all, you get a very good magazine, Model Aviation. It comes out every month. It is just an excellent model airplane magazine. It covers everything: rules, regulations, radio control, control line, free flight. It's just a great resource of information on what's going on in the hobby that will be helpful for your flying. The other thing the AMA does is they organize clubs. There's probably about 1,800 AMA flying sites in the United States. And the flying sites are nice. You get a nice place to fly. It's clear. Many of these have nice runways, and with the jet-powered models that you're flying, high-performance models, it's great to land and take off on a runway. There are other members that you can interact with when you're flying. I think that's always kind of fun. Tables to set up your models, charging stations for many of them. And many of the clubs have instructors as part of the membership of the club. So I think just the club itself is a good thing to have. The other thing that's important for us as modelers, again, this is being filmed in 2024. We, as our model airplane pilots, are involved in the FAA. The FAA really kept a hands-off approach in RC modeling until about 2015 or so. What has started to change that was the quadcopter drones. The drones take pictures. They're incentivized to fly to a lot of areas away from a structured club field environment. A lot of violations, controlled airspace, and so forth. And so the FAA, over the past 10 years, has been gradually getting involved with the RC modeling community. The next chapter, I'll tell you the 3 things you have to do with the FAA before you start flying that'll get you off on the right foot. But the AMA is a lobbying organization, supports our efforts for flying. 2 things that the AMA did to help us out tremendously when these regulations came in is if you're a recreational flyer flying your RC model airplane at a club airfield, you do not need a device called remote ID that is on the airplane to identify your takeoff location. So again, anything you hear about remote ID, if you're flying recreationally at your AMA club, you do not need the remote ID. It's called an FAA recognized identification area. The other thing the AMA did that was a big help, when these remote ID rules initially came out, there was talk in the draft legislation on this to have a national network that we had to log onto and pay a monthly fee for before it could fly. The AMA was instrumental in getting that removed from the final ruling in the FAA Reauthorization Act. The AMA also has an excellent website with a lot of information to include a super easy way to find a club near you where you're flying. I'd say probably about 95% of the clubs you see for RC model airplanes are affiliated with AMA. So there are a lot of advantages to that if you don't have, say, a large backyard where you're flying, to have a community of modelers, instructors, and just kind of a fun place to fly. As discussed previously, the FAA is now officially part of radio control modeling. It just is the way it is. Originally, the FAA lumped together drones and our fixed-wing RC aircraft and helicopters. More and more, they're separating the two in their discussions, but this is continually advancing discussion as the FAA works to understand the situation and the flying circumstances of different communities. But for fixed-wing radio control model aircraft, there's 3 things you're going to have to do. The first is you're going to have to go to the FAA drone zone section of the FAA website. I'll put a link in the description, but the easiest way to find this is just to Google FAA drone zone. It'll take you right to the drone portion of the FAA website. On that, we'll take a look at the website here in a second, is everything you need to get started, just a lot of information. So the first thing is you're going to have to get a registration number with the FAA. For recreational flyers and others who are not making a profit flying, it's pretty easy. You get 1 registration number for all the aircraft you own. If you have 20 RC model airplanes, it's the same registration number for each of the models. Very easy to do all this online. You don't have to go anywhere. The fee, I believe, is $5 for a 3-year registration. You renew it every 3 years. The FAA will send you an email, and you get a registration number. The other thing you have to do, this is a little bit more recent requirement, is you have to take a test as a recreational model airplane pilot to fly with the FAA. Now, this is called a trust test, the recreational UAS safety test, I believe it stands for. It's a very easy test to take. It's free. You can do it online. It's optimized for smartphones. It takes less than 45 minutes to take the test, and it's correctable to 100%. It's multiple choice. If you select a wrong answer, it'll keep coming back until you get to the right answer. So you kind of learn by taking this. It's really just a form of a lecture. It's good to let new modelers know that might not have a lot of training that things exist, such as airspace, controlled airspace, uncontrolled airspace, where we can fly, maximum altitudes, maximum distances, and things like that. In the past, we didn't have to worry about this too much with the FAA because we've always kept sight of our models. So we basically stayed out of harm's way because of that restriction. Again, the drones can fly long distances, GPS navigation, they're flying in a controlled airspace. So we have to take a trust test. Everybody has to take the trust test. It's one test for your lifetime. There is no renewal or refresh needed. Take it, print out the certificate, and then you are qualified for the trust test. The third thing you have to do is comply with the remote ID. Now, I mentioned this briefly before. The final remote ID ruling came into effect in March of 2024. So everybody flying recreationally for models over 250 grams, about 8.8 ounces, need remote ID. It's a module in the aircraft that transmits the aircraft's various information to include the takeoff location of the airplane. The remote ID does not do any traffic deconfliction. We still have to fly in uncontrolled airspace, but it will allow law enforcement or FAA personnel to determine the takeoff location of a drone in case the drone crashes or causes an incident. Basically, they can identify the pilot of the drone. So the good news, as I mentioned before, if you're a recreational pilot, which you are if you're watching this video, and you fly at an AMA club field, you do not need any remote ID because the AMA has negotiated as part of the FAA regulation a FRIA, or an FAA recognized identification area, where if you fly in the FRIA, you don't need any remote ID. It's a very good deal. It's just something for the back of your mind. It's just one thing you don't have to worry about. There's an awful lot of videos on the remote ID, but just remember, none required recreational flying at AMA modeling airfields. So let's go take a quick look at the FAA Drone Zone and what we do on that FAA site, the various things you can sign up for. There are a lot of AMA flying sites, probably about 1,800 in the U.S. as shown here on the map. And this ties into the FAA, so just Google FAA Drone Zone. You'll get to the drone portion of the FAA website, and this is the government official FAA website for the Drone Zone. You can see how to register your drone. Welcome to the Drone Zone. You will have to create an account. All this is very easy to do online. Lots of helpful links. We go up to the top, we can see where they talk about recreational flyers, commercial flyers, where can I fly? Just a lot of information, the trust test, more questions. And just as an overview, just what is a recreational flight? Just good background information you should know as a model airplane pilot flying in the National Airspace System. Again, back to that home page and further information. So now we've joined the AMA, we're up to speed on the FAA and the requirements, we're all set for that first lesson. Now, let's find a club field, because one of the emphasis points I'm going to have is to have a good instructor for those first RC model airplane flights. So the AMA just has a wonderful, easy to use club locator on their website. And it'll have all the information if there's a free at that airfield, what they do, what types of aircraft are flying, for example, jets, helicopters, drones, and so forth, if instructors available. All very easy to use. And let's take a look at that AMA website right now. This is the Academy of Model Aeronautics website, just information on Club of the Month, general information, news highlights, what they're doing in Washington, contest. And you can see here is a Get Started section, find a place to fly, resources, get connected, the AMA Flight School, the magazine,
Register the FAA, we just talked about earlier, taking the trust test, just a lot of good information. So let's go ahead and find a club. Couldn't be any easier. Name, city, state. We'll just start with the state of Georgia where I live and see where that takes us on the website. So there's Georgia, we put it in there, and it's asking for a little bit more information. Put the city where I live, Sugar Hill, and how far away from where your city is. I'll pick 50 miles just for the heck of it. Notice we'll check FRIA for the FAA Recognized Identification Area, and bingo, here are all the fields that meet that requirement that are AMA fields. Note the little green arrow means it's an FAA Recognized Identification Area. My club, the Hilltop Flyers, about 22 miles or so from home. Contact information from the president, club details, contact information, the website. They do have instructors, what type of flying is allowed there, the number of members, 92 is not bad at all. Location on a map, just couldn't be any easier. And they even have a link to that club website so you can take a look at that.
So let's talk about instructors. So I feel it is very important to learn how to fly your trainer aircraft without automation so that you understand the basics of flying, and you're going to learn how to do this flying with an instructor at your local club. These instructors are wonderful people. They take time out of their day. They enjoy bringing new people in the hobby and teaching them. When you go to the club for the first time, you can introduce yourself, and they'll eventually identify the instructors at the field, or these days with email, you can contact the officers of the club, introduce yourself, tell them anything about your background. You'd like to arrange a meeting with an instructor, you can arrange that before you go out at the field. But again, I think the instructor is so important. I've taught full-scale aviation for years. Just getting the fundamentals down with an instructor, not picking up bad habits, is going to set the foundation for success and fun in the hobby, because the whole idea is you'll start off with trainers, but you want to have the skills and the ability to fly more advanced models, whatever those may be, and just learning the basics early on are the key to that, I truly feel. I'll talk a little bit about sims later on in the video. The computer flight sims for model airplanes are absolutely wonderful. They're astoundingly good these days. I highly recommend using these sims. I use Real Flight, but there are other sims out there. However, the sims are an adjunct to the actually being with an instructor at the field. They'll certainly shorten your learning time. I think you are going to take a longer time learning to fly just the sim on your own. You're probably going to have a few crashes just because there's a break between the sim environment and the real world of the field. So by all means, embrace the sims, use them, but use them in conjunction with your instructor at the RC model field. I think that'd be the best approach. I do recommend getting a 4-channel RC trainer type aircraft. There's a range of trainers out there. Many are very good. One that I would recommend is the FMS Ranger. I've had a lot of very happy experiences with the FMS line of almost ready to fly aircraft. They're very well built. They fly fine. Everything comes in the box, put in the right place. And so the Ranger, there'll be a link in the description if you want to buy one. You can take a look at that. And what is nice about the Ranger is its size. It's about a 48-inch wingspan, so you can see it quite well in the sky. That little bit heavier aircraft tend to fly better, to see and understand your mistakes. I fly micro airplanes. I have nothing wrong with micro airplanes. They're certainly inexpensive. But with the micro airplanes, they fly like micro airplanes, even with the stabilization on. They're kind of bouncing around, not quite sure what your input was, the wind, the airplane. A little bit bigger trainer like the Ranger is a very good start. Typically, you'll have to add a receiver, your transmitter that you'll use from multiple aircraft due to the computer memory, but that'd be a good thing to have. The Ranger also has flaps, which is a 5th channel. It's a very normal thing to have flaps with a trainer aircraft. It's a good habit pattern to get into. To use the flaps, understand what they're for. You can land with or without the flaps. That's just a good option for you to have as your trainer aircraft. Keep in mind, when you contact your club, many clubs do have a club trainer. It's just a trainer purchased by the club from dues that's available for new people to fly. That's another good thing to have. If you just want to have a trainer that you know will fly well, the club has that for your use. That's just another thing that you can explore once you contact your instructor at the club. I also think almost a ready-to-fly aircraft are a very smart way to start your journey learning to fly an RC model aircraft. I build many aircraft. I love building. This is a 3-channel conversion of a Guilo Cessna 170 that I've done. I get a great deal of pleasure building and flying aircraft that I have constructed. I encourage everybody to learn how to build aircraft. It's a great aspect of the hobby. But to position yourself for success, I see a lot of merit buying an almost a ready-to-fly aircraft. And the reason is they're very inexpensive. We know everything's built right, and you don't have to worry about things like a warp creeping into the wing. The center of gravity location usually comes out very well because it's built for the battery location and all that. It'll be right. It marks clearly the control throw that you need to do. Everything's thought out, pre-planned, and these ready-to-fly aircraft, especially the FMS ones, they just fly very well. So you don't have to worry about, as you're learning how to fly, some defect in the aircraft that you built that you don't even know about potentially, incidents, arrangements, whatever. The ARFs fly very well, so I think you're well positioned to consider buying an ARF for your initial training aircraft. And again, the Ranger is a great start on that. As I've mentioned several times, the instructor is just so central to getting a good start with the foundations and the proper skills to be a pilot. If your budget and time schedule allow, do consider going to a professional RC pilot training school. RC Flight School is one. I'm not affiliated with them, but they have been around for about 30 years. I've seen their advertising covered a lot in the modeling press. They, in a 5-day period, they'll provide the aircraft, the transmitters, everything, to include the instructor, of course, a very nice field. And they will teach you how to fly. It'll be a fairly intense course of instruction, but I know from my professional flight training, when you're in that professional focus environment, you are really positioned to learn stuff, pick up good habits from the get-go. So it might be worth your while to take a look at a professional pilot flight training school. That is just the best of all possible worlds, I think, again, if your budget and time permits something like that. A side note, just for what it's worth, is if you're a full-scale pilot, general aviation, or commercial pilot, the skills that you have flying these aircraft took a lot of work, and you're very proud of those, but they don't necessarily transfer well to flying RC model aircraft. You will understand things like control surfaces and so forth, but the orientation, the fact that the controls are reversed when the model flies towards you as opposed away from you, they don't automatically mean if you can fly a full-scale aircraft, you can just jump in and do a model aircraft. Again, that paramount need for an instructor for those initial flights with your RC model airplane is going to be to your advantage. I've got just a few more kind of concluding notes, just that I'll look here to make sure I cover everything. First of all, today in 2024, every radio that you buy with a ready-to-fly or at the store is what we call 2.4 gigahertz technology. And what that means, through some wonderful computer magic, your transmitter and your receiver are binded or electronically locked together. So that means that you can fly without any worries about frequency deconfliction or jamming somebody on the same frequency, because nobody's really on a frequency. It's a pattern to match the transmitter to the receiver. So that's just a little bit of good news. You'll see 2.4 gigahertz a lot when you buy transmitters and RC model airplanes. It's just nothing but a good news story. The other thing to consider is whether you're going to have a glow gas-powered model engine or electric power. It used to be back 2010 or earlier, everybody flew with gas engines. We call it gas, but it really uses a nitro fuel for the 2-cycle engine. But it was a liquid-fueled internal combustion engine, because that was the only thing you could have. With the revolution of high-quality brushless electric motors and lithium polymer batteries, commonly called LiPos, that changed everything. LiPo batteries with brushless motors work great for everything from trainers to electric ducted fans. The battery's high quality, the motor's high quality, and I would say well over 95% of the modelers use electric models. I think you're well served to consider electric flight for your trainer. Your instructor for sure will be flying electric models. He or she may not even know how to operate the gas engines. So electric is great for the start. However, later on you may want to do the gas engines. There are certainly a few people that show up from time to time with the gas engine, but you're probably going to be going the electric engine route for your initial flights with RC model aircraft. I also mentioned that RC sims are a huge help. Let's take a quick look at some landings and takeoffs from the real flight RC computer simulator. It's on a Windows-based computer. You get what they call controllers that are just the same as transmitters. They're just a wonderful way to practice various maneuvers. Oftentimes you can fly an airplane that you buy, and you can practice higher performance aircraft, stunt aircraft, historical aircraft if you want. Again, the sims in conjunction with a flight instructor for learning the basics of how to fly.
There are an incredible number of aircraft you can call up with the sim. This is a World War I sup with pup, and it flies, I guess, a lot like a pup, kind of draggy. Got to use ailerons, got to use rudder for adverse yaw. And so it's just good to practice it, to look at the orientation, get a feel for different flying aircraft, and just practice your circuits around the field and just see how it lands. So the sim is a wonderful adjunct to your RC flying with the paramount need for an instructor as you learn.
Thank you for taking the time to look at this video. RC flying model aircraft is a wonderful hobby. There are some things you can do to position yourself for success: joining the AMA, getting signed up with the FAA, understand their involvement in our hobby today, linking up with a club field, finding an instructor, getting the right trainer. As I mentioned, the FMS Ranger is a great option. Link in the description if you want to buy one. And then joining with your instructor in the journey of just learning the basics of how to fly and just getting the foundation down so that you can fly that trainer with complete confidence and success and have the skills to progress with more advanced aircraft. And just enjoy the wonderful aspects that this hobby has for us with building, flying, comradeship at the airfield, and just having a good time. Thank you.